Effectively standardizing digital forensics practices and procedures across an entire country requires collective investment and collaboration as lab personnel support and learn from one another. Coordinating this effort in the United Kingdom is the Forensic Capability Network, or FCN, which operates under the ambit of the National Police Chiefs Council Transforming Forensics Program. With the Forensic Focus podcast to talk about it all is Paul Gibson, Regional Deputy Chief Constable for the East Midlands Special Operations Unit and National Police Chiefs Council Lead for the Forensic Marketplace and Digital Forensics. I'm your podcast host, Krista Miller, and welcome to DCC Gibson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Krista. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. So as we at Forensic Focus over the last year or so, we've been delving into standardization. And one thing that stands out is all of the moving parts across accreditation, best practices, various programs and projects. More than a year after the NPCC's digital forensic science strategy was published, how and where does it all fit together? And how is the strategy guiding the process?
Okay, a really good opening question and probably helpful for me to just set some context.
Please.
So I've recently taken over as the National Police Chiefs Council Digital Portfolio Lead, and I want to give that work some real impetus here in England and Wales. And certainly something that is a priority for our government at present is reducing violence against women and girls. And this is very much a priority across policing and a priority for me. That's why we're delivering on something called the Rape Review Response Project. We call it RASO, so Rape and Serious Sexual Offending. And from my perspective, it's important to improve the experience, particularly for the victim, for the witnesses, and to make sure that we can maximize the prosecution of suspects for this type of horrific offending that our populations endure. Now, from the question of the National Digital Forensic Science Strategy, I'll call it the DFSS as we go, because it's a bit of a home, of course. This was published, as you'll know, back in July 2020. And this is a comprehensive piece of work that I'm using really as the blueprint for my work in this portfolio. So it sets out in detail the many challenges we face in digital forensics and the drivers for real systemic change that is needed. And at its core is the parlance that's often used, but that whole system approach. And this is required because there are so many moving parts, so many complex interdependencies, and the DFSS is the way that we can actually bring these strands together. So what the DFSS does, it breaks down into 6 main areas that covers research and innovation, working better with industry and other stakeholders. And this improves sight across the work that's already underway and also what's coming over the horizon in terms of that kind of horizon scanning about what's new. So I guess the best way I can summarize it is that the strategy is the theory. We're now developing the practice. Okay. And I brought stakeholders together from police, law enforcement, and criminal justice agencies just a few weeks ago to run a workshop to basically go through the 6 strands of the strategy, right through from operational support, right through to market management. And from there, we are working together to put together a 3-year implementation plan. So that's something that we're working hard on at the moment. But from my perspective, it's really important that it's led by the community, because actually we're delivering on behalf of policing to make sure we give the best possible service we can to the victims of crime in England and Wales.
Can you give some examples of how that's working in practice?
Yeah, so I think a good example would be the RASO project, so the Rape and Serious Sexual Offending. At present, what we've done from our Transforming Forensics programme is we've utilised £5 million of funding in order to support much better digital forensic science services. So what does that look like in reality? Well, 24 or more forces, because we work in geographical counties within in England and Wales. So there's 43 forces, and they've all made bids into our program to say, what they required. And what's been on offer is digital forensic vans. So these are basically mobile digital forensics units, which have the benefit of being able to triage exhibits at the scene in order to reduce the number of exhibits that are going to come for more detailed examination. We're also investing in ruggedized laptops, so kind of police-proof laptops that can go out into the field and again do very similar, in-field work, where again we can triage and be really directed as to what we seize, and therefore what we take back to our digital forensic units. And also we are further investing in kiosks, so telephone kiosks where we can enhance the download from mobile telephones to speed up the process, so that essentially justice can be served quicker, victims can be supported, and we seek an outcome where people are held to account for the crimes that they've been involved with. And what's really important is just to make sure that the victims of those horrendous crimes are supported as best as they can be. And digital forensics has an important part to play in that.
I think it was at the most recent forensic science regulators report reflected improvement in all of those areas, or digital forensics overall, with a fair way still to go. Wanted to find out more about the Forensic Capability Network and Transforming Forensics. I know that the two are closely related. How did all of that come about, and what was the reasoning behind them?
Okay, so the Transforming Forensics program is a program to design and deliver capabilities. It's sort of the project arm, the delivery arm of our kind of Transforming Forensics program. So the Forensic Capability Network is the network that supports forces along their journey across the delivery of many of the DFSSS priorities. So whereas the Transforming Forensic program is the project element, the Forensic Capability Network is the business as usual element that's supporting forces in the delivery of digital forensics across the country. Transforming Forensics was set up to deal with some of the intractable problems that forensics in policing faces. These include all of the issues that are set out in the Digital Forensic Science Strategy. But for me, I guess they can be best summed up into three main areas. One being the exponential increase in the volume of data and devices for examination, the kind of Moore's law effect. The complex challenge that each digital examination presents, because that becomes more and more challenging. And of course, the absolute imperative to build and maintain public trust. That's really, really important. So they'd be the three main issues for me. And it's really important also just to stress that the forces themselves, the forensic community, the forensic vendors and the forensic providers have helped us design the Forensic Capability Network and the areas that Transforming Forensics needs to rely upon. So it's very much, we're here to deliver on behalf of policing in terms of what, what is their biggest priority and their biggest need. And in terms of, our project, we've been very heavily involved in gathering baseline data from digital forensics units to understand kind of gaps. We've been very busy with data protection requirements. We've been putting together expert networks in order to advise both the SCN and TF in terms of digital forensic requirements. And, we'll talk a little bit about CSA Automate, perhaps, where we've been looking at artificial intelligence and robotic automation to deal with CSEA, so child sexual exploitation and abuse images, which again takes up so much of our digital forensic unit's time. And what we're trying to do is really try and streamline that so that we can again achieve our justice outcomes much quicker.
I do want to talk about CSE Automate rather. Before we get to that, I want to focus in on, there are a couple specific projects that I think that that it's coming out of, specifically the FCN Exchange and ultimately the Forensic Information System. How are they supporting the DFSS moving forward?
Okay, a great question. For me, it's more that CSE Automate is the first stage in trying to achieve the vision for the strategy, rather than Exchange being the driver. Exchange is just the platform or the technology on which the tools can sit. So again, it's a networked national infrastructure. The project is also not just about technology, it's about developing standardized processes and support to make it easier for the forces across our country to adopt the CSE Automate project and service. We chose to focus on CSE, as I just alluded to, as it takes up around about 60% of our digital forensic unit capacity nationally.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same in the US. So this helps to reduce the burden here within our digital forensics units, and that gives us then greater capacity to focus our digital forensic experts on other things. So this is about automation of processes, machine learning, artificial intelligence, rather than CSE on its own. And what we're aiming to do is make it crime type agnostic. So this could be applied to other crime types as well. But I think in terms of CSE, child sexual exploitation, again, crimes committed against the most vulnerable people within our communities, and to utilize cutting edge technology to enhance how we investigate that type of criminality. Also much better in terms of welfare for police officers and those individuals that normally view these types of horrendous images. I think it's entirely the right thing to deliver on behalf of policing, and of course then frees up our experts to then work on other types of digital forensic problems.
Yeah, I think when you look at the number of cyber tips that are generated by the cyber tip line at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, that you get a sense of how staggering the numbers really are, and hopefully get to a point where you can at least address more of those, if not all of them, which would be ideal. So you mentioned that CSE Automate being the first stage towards the vision for the FCN Exchange. How do you anticipate that it will adapt beyond just CSEA?
Okay, well, I mean, our CSE Automate placements, so we have 3 placements at the moment, utilizing 3 different technologies, and they're really starting to bear fruit.
Okay.
And I've mentioned some of these placements involve robotic automation, and we're also developing standardized workflows and tools to test across all 3 different types of technologies. We're really excited about one of our placements with Greater Manchester Police. We're excited about all of them, but this is where the automated workflow about how we analyze these images have gone through 2 rounds of vigorous testing. And the team has incorporated everything they've learned from that into then enhancing the prototype into something that is really starting to now being tested utilizing live data.
Okay.
So this is live operational data alongside existing processes, so we can make sure we can validate and speak to the quality element of our work to ensure that our processes are accredited and valid in terms of what they produce. So I guess that's the CSEA part of the process, but we know that this can be applied to other crime types. It's like building a road. You make it for any sort of vehicle to drive on. And just from the top of my head, there's some exciting work certainly in my area around mobile phone extraction on an industrial basis. and also working with both CCTV and surveillance imagery, so we can start to apply artificial intelligence and machine learning over that to stop officers and staff having to sit hours and hours to view particular things. We can actually now start to automate some of this, which obviously then frees up time to be able to focus on other issues. Does that
Yeah, it does. I just was curious, what are there other, or if you can talk about other crime types and evidence types beyond CSE that are sort of, I guess, next to be prioritized within that?
Yeah, well, at present, our focus is, in terms of the TF program, is on the RASO sexual offences work,
okay,
and the CSA Automate. What I'm really keen on as the digital forensics lead is then for our community to take us to the next steps of what our delivery plan should look like.
Okay.
And within that, what I want to be able to do is fix the intractable issues that our frontline policing community are facing, and let them advise how we best develop the next set of capabilities.
I see.
So there's all sorts of theoretical opportunities around homicide to CCTV, as I've mentioned, and everything in between. But what I want to make sure is that both the products of the Forensic Capability Network and the Transforming Forensics program are very much led by the community. So we are solving the issues that they really identify as a priority.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to get into, I mean, given that that sort of network of agencies that are expected to bring their experience and perspective to bear on this. So following years of austerity and now Brexit, where have budget and resource issues impacted the law enforcement agencies and digital forensics units, and as a result, their ability to implement these changes, especially as technology itself continues to evolve?
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important question. We know that technology, in terms of the pace of its development, is just exploding. And of course, within law enforcement, there is a lack of capacity and resource, particularly following the pandemic, which has had a huge impact upon our public resources. So it is a challenge to deliver transformation in that environment, and at the same time has been able to still deliver operational digital forensic requirements, which often is a matter of life and death in terms of some of the inquiries and investigations we have to make. But we are focusing on achieving what rapid benefits we can, while laying the groundwork for bigger and longer term systemic change. CSA Automate, we've touched upon, is a direct response to the challenge to free up the resources that places most burden upon digital forensics units, as well as and it really is important to stress the point of trying to maximize the welfare of our staff that have to deal with these horrendous crime types. And it is a challenge within the UK in terms of how the policing system is structured, because we have 43 forces in England and Wales that all have autonomy to run their forces in the way that they would wish. And we are certainly very mindful of that. But what we are trying to do is be able to knit together the best solutions that give the most benefit for everybody. And I think, the challenge for me is that when you think long term, and the speed in which criminality is advancing technology and the use of digital media, we have to keep pace.
Right.
And there is the long-term view that, wouldn't it be great to be able to deliver national platforms, national automation? And I don't decry that, they are great ambitions to have, but what we do need to do is deliver within the funding envelope that's available.
Yeah.
So for me, it's around building blocks and deliver tangible results that support chief constables in their forces, but also make sure that those building blocks over time do form the foundation of, a building, if you want to use that analogy, that delivers in the long term. And that's what we're doing with our digital forensic science strategy and our delivery plan. a challenge, but certainly a challenge that I'm very much excited about.
Yeah, it sounds like a huge opportunity. Sort of to that end, the DFSS referred to digital forensic science as a golden thread running through the investigative process, tying together the entire process from crime scene to courtroom. Are you receiving feedback from the Crown Prosecution Service as to how well all of these efforts together are resolving confidence issues with the digital forensic services?
We are. We're consulting widely with everyone
Okay.
who has a part to play. And that's from the Crown Prosecution Service and other government departments to forensic service providers and vendors as well. The DFSS will never become a reality without collective buy-in. That
Right.
is something that is absolutely paramount in terms of working collegiately together.
Mhm.
And for example, the Crown Prosecution Service has been closely consulted with our operational guidance we've developed for dealing with legacy data within digital forensics, and also on our CSA Automate flagship project. And as I mentioned earlier, I brought all stakeholders together within the past few weeks to really make the DFSS vision a reality in terms of a tangible plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that involved sort of 60 to 80 people from all aspects of law enforcement, criminal justice and policing to work through the different areas of the strategies and to determine what's the most important. And what I'm then in the process of doing is now setting up individual leads that come from the forensic community that will then run each and every part of the strands of the strategy. So
Okay.
operational support, developing the workforce, stimulating the financial and the commercial market, and so on and so forth. So we very much got leadership from within forensics that are then developing services and products and solutions that they know that will work and will add real value.
Okay. I guess the reason I focus specifically on the CPS is that the knowing how the legal landscape has been slower to evolve than the technology, sometimes to investigators' detriment. How are the FCN and the DFSS and the other pieces addressing those kinds of gaps, especially as data is increasingly stored across borders, often encrypted, fragmented in terms of the insights they provide into people's lives?
Yeah, and the Home Office in the UK leads on developing legislation and guidance on interpreting legislation here.
Okay.
And we are working, as you would expect, very closely with them to make changes in the future. We share data with them as part of our baselining, our ground truth data project,
Yes.
so that they fully understand from data the forces themselves have provided exactly what the challenges are and where the gaps are. Research and innovation is a future focus and a key strand for the strategy. And this will give us a better idea of what's coming down the line. So being able to anticipate future threat, future technological enablement, and understand how we can best respond to that. And I think, in terms of working together, I would reiterate the earlier point. It is so important that we work together as a whole system to develop a future strategy that can deliver in the longer term. And certainly my thinking is very much in the longer term, but as said, we need to build those building blocks to make sure that we take incremental steps towards that. Because again, there's no way we can deliver the perfect solution within year one. It's going to be a question of step by step working towards the vision and to be guided by the blueprint of the strategy.
Yeah. I look forward to following along as you're going through this. It sounds like a huge opportunity, a huge challenge, but just very interesting overall.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us today. It's been a real delight just to hopefully give some information that just gives a little bit of an insight into what we're doing, but of course more than happy to reach out and connect in the future to discuss any future kind of arrangements or any questions that you have. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely, DCC Gibson. Thank you for joining us again. Thanks also to our listeners. You'll be able to find this recording and transcription along with more articles, information, and forums at www.forensicfocus.com. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, or if you'd like to suggest someone for us to interview, please let us know. Stay safe.